Good, all right. All right, good evening, and welcome to the Olentangy Local Schools Board meeting. Today is Thursday, August 10th. We are in the Berlin room, and this is a regular session. I'll call the meeting to order. Mr. Jenkins, please call the roll.
Mr. Lester?
Here.
Dr. Dabrico?
Here.
Dr. Wise?
Here.
Dr. Wallach?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here. All right, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So I'll now entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written. We have, bless you, no amendments to the agenda. So could I have a motion, please?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, please call the roll, Mr. Jenkins.
Dr. Dabrico?
Yes.
Dr. Wise?
Yes.
Dr. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Lester?
Yes. All right, so we've got the board president's report. Now that the agenda is approved. Before I defer to the other board members, a couple things. So we've got tonight the discussion around redistricting for the new elementary school. So one of the challenges of being in a growing school district is that when you open a new building, you have to create some new boundary lines, and that creates some strife among children and parents. And we've done this a lot, and I think we've kind of got the practice down. And so we'll talk about the process that we'll undertake for number 17, but I just want folks to know that while the process is never perfect, we always try to get it so that we're keeping the best interest of the students and parents in mind. So it's not an easy process, but I know it's one that we're very practiced in, and I think we've got a good plan, and I think we'll do an excellent job. So with that, I don't know, Libby, did you want to talk about Olentangy?
Yes, I would love to. So tomorrow evening from 6 to 10 p.m. at the Africa Center at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium is the annual OEF, the largest fundraiser that the organization hosts. OEF, of course, Olentangy Education Foundation, the organization that provides classroom grants. So enabling teachers to provide really extraordinary learning opportunities, really innovative, creative, instructional practices through these grants that we're able to offer through fundraising events such as this. So this is a really fun evening, and there are about 25 tickets remaining, I believe, at $125 a piece. So those are still available on the OlentangyEducationFoundation.org website. But again, 6 to 10 in the Africa Center, and this year we're actually, there's a theme. So the art of education, and it's going to really feature the art programs across the district, especially those funded through OEF grants. There will even be a silent auction that features art that has been created by our students and our faculty. So I think that's pretty cool. The food is always dynamite, and giraffe encounters and other animal encounters. You can feed the giraffes. It's a very, very fun evening surrounded by people who love this district and support all that we do. So if your evening is free, and you're not going to see Morgan Whalen, you should come see us at Olentangy.
Can I ask just a quick question? How many tickets did you say were left?
25. And I don't know that they're available at the door, so I would encourage people to get online to purchase them.
They may be gone by the people seeing this video may have already.
I think you should get it. They
Purchase
should get on
them.
it. It's a good time.
Okay, thank you. 25 left. Thank you.
25 left.
Any other updates from the other board members?
Just a brief update about the Facilities Committee. We met last week and our continued planning for, basically, as Mr. O'Brien said, the growth of the district that's necessitating redistricting for our new elementary school. We're continuing to look at our facility needs. Anywhere you drive, as we've said many times in these meetings, anywhere you drive, you see lots and lots and lots of growth, and that equates to additional needs. So we're continuing to evaluate that. We'll be coming forward with proposals as we go forward, but it remains a very pressing issue for us.
Agree. And I'll say this, and I may regret saying it, but Dublin's talking about explosive growth of 200 students. I wish we were only growing by 200 students. So, we can handle the growth. We've really done a good job with it, and it's one of the longer-term sustainable challenges that we continue to face and we continue to meet, and the community has supported it. So I think it's a challenge that we're ready for. So I appreciate it.
I think we probably grew by 200 students in the time it took you to say that.
Probably, maybe. So,
As of today, we're 374 students over projections.
over projection.
Over projections.
Say that again, Mr. Meyer.
374 over projections. Now, we'll see what happens in the next week, and some students won't show up, so we'll continue to monitor that, but 374 over projections.
All right, so that's it for the President's report. We will turn over to our first and only presentation item. It's Mr. Randy Wright, our Chief of Administrative Services, talking about the redistricting process, as well as Krista Davis, Head of Communications. Executive Director of Communications, is that correct?
Still cheap.
Okay.
Still
Make sure I get
cheap.
the titles right.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Wright and I are happy to be here this evening to talk to you about our redistricting process this year. We just completed this a year ago for our 6th middle school, Berlin Middle School, which we are opening on Sunday. And here we go for elementary school 17. So we wanted to give you an overview of the process. Our redistricting committee has convened as of this last week, August 1st, and reviewed the process that they'll be undertaking and the planning units, which is, just to remind everyone, how we organize the district in chunks so that we can look at how many students in each area and where they will be moving. By the end of the month, the committee will be meeting again to talk about options that have been created by them and the team, and then they will spend September really reviewing the options, continuing to refine. By the end of October, we will be ready to go to the community. There will be 2 opportunities for community members to come in person, and then we'll probably also record the presentation. For the options that will be presented for the community to weigh in. There will be an electronic survey that will be open from the start of the community outreach dates through a couple days beyond that till November 12th. So from October 31st through November 12th, we'll have a survey available for all community members to participate in, as well as they will be able to come in person to one or both of the forums or sessions, and then also be able to see those sessions online as well. Then they will collect all the community feedback, review that, continue to look at their recommendation, make any necessary revisions to that, and then present their recommendation to the superintendent, because the superintendent in Ohio is responsible for making redistricting decisions. And then
Sorry, could you say that again?
the superintendent, not the board, is responsible for making redistricting decisions. And that will happen at the end of this fall, between the time that the committee makes those recommendations, November 15th to Mr. Meyer, and then on December 7th, he will announce his decision on those attendance boundaries, but also overlaying that process will be an opportunity for the board to name the school, and we will have a survey leading up to that to give you information about what the community would like, and then as well the mascot and colors of the school, so that we can announce all of that in December. So that is our process.
So, I'm sorry. and
Sure.
Apologies if you mentioned this, but this is just elementary boundaries only? Will we be touching any middle or high school boundaries?
We are not touching
Not
high school
intending to,
and
but
not in,
Everything's, there will be no conversation around high school boundaries.
Okay.
There may be continued conversation around middle school as we look at numbers, and we'll present a little more information further in this conversation.
yes, so hold on to that thought. And then I just would like to take a moment to remind us of the redistricting guidelines resolution that the Board of Education adopted in 2015. And this is something that we go back to every time we go through a redistricting process in order to remind ourselves the guidance that the board has given us to when we face a redistricting opportunity. So we have not changed this the last couple times. It's held true and worked well for us. So
You wanna, just real quick, if you
Sure.
want to zero in on the second column, the second bullet, this is why we're here today, because once determined after consideration of all of our enrollment, our boundaries should remain intact except to adjust for disparate populations, distribute programs, or for the opening of additional buildings, which is why we are convening this committee at this point. Okay?
all right.
All right, so this is a historical slide, and we shared this information. Good evening, by the way, ladies. I'm sorry. Good to see you all.
Just jump right in.
Jump right in. We shared this with our committee. Want to make sure that you had an opportunity to see this as well. And what we're looking at here is over the last 32 years, we've opened 27 schools. And at the very beginning, all the way to the left of this graph, there was only, prior to this graph, was only the Shanahan facility. And so this graph starts with the opening of Olentangy High School. And then you see as these other buildings came on. So Krista was actually here in the very first column of the district of this slide, 92, 93, when it was still, and before this slide, when it was one building. I think we have a pointer? I don't know if we do or not.
I don't know if we have a pointer. I've been
Yeah, we
around
do.
too long to
So,
understand this.
yeah, so Krista came out of here, so then I was right around here in the 99, 2000 school year when I came. So this column was me, and then all of this has happened since. Chris and I have been so blessed to be involved with redistricting from this point on, back in 2015. And we're excited to be part of this process as well. And so as we are getting our committee resituated, and this is the superintendent's committee, so these are one of our private committees, and we are fortunate this year. We have 2/3 of our committee is returning, and we do have a third of our group which is new. We looked at some opportunities to, we had some people who have helped us over many, many years, have kind of fallen off with kids getting older, and so they asked if they could be possibly replaced, and so we've had some others that were nominated and shared with us. So we do have a new group that's very excited and very energized as well. So we did kick this off last Monday, and we will be meeting about twice a month, as Krista said. So this is what we are addressing. As said, these boundaries, that map is the one that you can find on our website, or if you go to our website and you look at the attendance boundaries link, and you go to our GIS program, it gives you a really good understanding. You can click basically anywhere in the map and get an idea of what that feeder pattern is for any school. Feeder pattern, again, is an elementary which feeds into a middle school, which feeds into a high school. But the attendance boundaries as they were set last December are what are shown to the right there. So the data on the left side of this slide, once we finished our redistricting work last December, the live-in enrollment is what we anticipated in December being in attendance when we started this school year. And you can see that even with this, we had some that were going to be overutilized. Overutilization is a little pink in the elementaries. Yellow is high utilization. And then now if you look at the 23-24 attendance line, and then you see what the actual utilization is, we have all but 4 of our elementaries currently at or above our target utilization. So we do have a lot to address with not only an eye on taking care of elementary 17, but as we see on the next page with the goals, we have to be mindful of what may come down the road and be careful that as we do redistricting, and we're in a very, very high growth time frame, we may end up possibly doing a little bit less than we typically would because of not wanting to undo something. The cardinal sin of redistricting would be to impact any family twice at a level. And because we're working with elementaries, that time frame is 6 years that a family could be impacted twice. So the work is going to be very, very purposeful. What are you doing over there? My slides keep jumping.
I think it's that.
Might be on a timer? I don't know. So
That's the
these are, go ahead, Mr. Bryan.
So if you could go back to the last slide.
Of course.
Where did we add modular capacity?
Thank you very much. So modular capacity has been added at Cheshire Elementary. So after our redistricting, we anticipated that we were going to have 17, but when we made those decisions, we had created an overflow process that sent a large number of those students to Shale Meadows Elementary with the additional classrooms that we are putting on there to help us get through the 23-24 school year. We see now that the anticipated projected enrollment as of about 3 weeks ago now is 839 and growing. So that area is the catch-all right now of where so much construction and new builds are moving in, and new families are moving in. So that's just a high yield right now.
Maybe, I don't know if Jeff maybe knows this or if you all know this, but what do the modular classrooms send our capacity to at Cheshire? What is that? Because it's not 625 anymore, it'd be a little bit higher.
It would be 25 per classroom, so another 100 in reality. So we're going off of our typical, but
Right.
correct. We can comfortably put 25 students in each of
So we're
those.
still over even with the modulars?
Yes, sir.
Because that'd be 775.
725.
725.
And that's why, capacity is kind of a
Thank you.
Yes,
subjective number versus an absolute number.
correct. Yep. Any other questions on this slide?
Can we ask general questions? Because I think you went to the thank you slide.
No, this,
No,
I
it was
have one more
accidental.
slide.
All right.
So these are the goals that we have set up for this process. Again, the number one goal is to establish attendance zone for elementary 17. This is a standard graph that's really, to my knowledge, no picture of anything that's going to impact our work. We want to make adjustments at our most overutilized schools, and this is what I was trying to allude to, that will not likely be impacted by any future redistricting processes. Should additional processes come on board, we don't want to create boundaries that we would have to undo, or after moving a family, we would move them again. So we're very cautious as we go through this. We will continue to review the data relative to our guidelines. As you know, we're going to facilitate these conversations in person on 2 opportunities with our community, and there will be a survey for anyone who's not able to attend to understand all the information and provide feedback. And our goal is to create some boundaries that will keep it as balanced as possible for the near future. So those are the goals that we have charged our committee with, that we will guide them through in the next 3.5 months. And we will continue to update you about monthly over the next 3 months as well.
Just spend a minute on feeder patterns and kind of the philosophy around feeder. And when I say feeder patterns, it's a student's journey from elementary, middle to high school, and how many of their fellow students will end up in the same school, different school. I know we've got some general philosophy around feeder patterns. We can spend a minute on that.
Yeah, so put this back up, and to kind of explain that really well, If we just want to look at, I'll just pick an arbitrary area right here. So this area that's just underneath the zone that says Shanahan, what we want to take a look at, which is why we consider our boundaries impacted by planning units. It's not just neighborhoods, it's regions. And a planning unit typically will include all of a neighborhood, but it will also include some other things as part. So, well, what we look at then is this, if this is a whole planning unit, we want to have as much as possible that a planning unit stays together in elementary and to middle and to high school. It is not, there are some places in our district where it's relatively easy to create a 100% feeder pattern, which means all of the students from a zone or even an elementary school will all travel to the same middle school. And then there are a few places where I think half of our middle schools, they feed 100% to one of the high schools, and our other 3 middle schools split across high schools. So when we have that split, we pay very close attention to the percentages. And ideally would be 50-50 if we're talking about going to 2 buildings. Sometimes this, if it's a really unique geographic area, there may be a split that goes to 3 buildings, and that would be an elementary to middle, possibly. And what that would require is we want to shoot for that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. We have a number in our head that we don't like to go below, which is about 25%. But it also depends on what that 25% is. And then if you dig through our website, you will find that there is one neighborhood in our district that is part of a 7% feeder that from elementary school, they go to a different high school. And that area is right here. And it is along Orange Road. It's right in this area. And it's a neighborhood that is just on the east side of the railroad tracks behind the water tower. And that neighborhood has always gone to Glen Oak Elementary School. And then they have then gone on to Orange Middle and Orange High School. They've always known that. They've always been very content with that. We don't like it, but the neighborhood has been very happy that they're all together in this way. So that would be the one true violation of a number, but it's been after a lot of conversations with those families and essentially their understanding cooperation.
And I would just say the philosophical approach is just to take that lens of feeder pattern after we look at the planning units and the utilization numbers and apply that over, kind of like the next layer over top to make sure all of those pieces are working together, because we really do want to keep that balance so that the students are going with a cohort that they know some folks in.
And then we also, it's not really in the slides but one of the things as part of the resolution talks about efficiency of operation. Lori Carter-Evans back here and Director of Transportation, and the transportation impact on the conversations we have are important, because we can't draw things that are going to create hardships for her department. So none of these things work in isolation. The feeder patterns aren't the one driving factor of how we draw boundaries. The hard and fast number of hit a target of 625 or 1,000 is not the driving factor. It's what's the best balance for the long-term effectiveness of boundaries that our committee can come up with as recommendations.
Just while we're on this slide, can you highlight where the new elementary would
Yeah,
be so
thank
people can see what we're talking about?
So this right here is Arrowhead Elementary. Right here is Shale Meadows Elementary. Elementary 17 is right here.
I was by it
In
the
that
other day.
general area, because my hand won't stop shaking.
It's right at like Peach Blow and.
Yeah, it is at the southwest corner of Peach Blow and Pyatt.
I think you can see it from all the other schools.
You can't.
Oh, yeah, it's a good middle ground, and they are making great progress with the construction up there.
And we have clustered elementaries before. If you go on the west side, Indian Springs, Liberty Tree, we have clustered together. So
And
people
Glen
may
Oak
scratch
and
their
Oak
heads and
Creek
say,
and
why
Elm Creek.
you get
yeah.
3 elementaries right next to each other, but if you look at where all the growth is and where the kids are coming from,
Yes, sir.
Right.
That's where the buildings need to be.
Right, exactly. Maybe you drive right through there and it's just houses everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there, and in fact, there's a development right to the south of it, right, that hasn't started, but that's,
Yeah,
that's
it's-
open
Yes.
there.
Good
so,
breaking ground
yeah,
now.
so.
Couple questions. You mentioned the meetings that you're having, superintendent meetings. Are those, you said they're private. Does that mean you can't come?
Correct,
If
those
you're-
are closed meetings.
Okay. I gotta put my glasses on. So Wednesday, Thursday night in November for the meetings, are they always on school nights?
Yes.
Okay. That's the easy answer. When was this, so this is 17. What levy is this being paid for from?
This was the same levy that opened Shale Meadows and opened Berlin Middle School. And then until we hit the capacity need, we pushed this elementary build off from the 2020 levy.
So thank you to the folks that supported that.
Yes,
Because
sir.
that building is
2020.
greatly needed.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Yeah, I got some questions too. First of all, I had the privilege of serving on the redistricting committee years ago prior to being on the board, and so I recognize what a complex process this is. And I think one of the overarching foundational elements that everyone keeps in their mind when working through this is that we're not moving numbers, we're moving kids, and we know that. So I appreciate, Mr. Wright, you speaking even to the idea that we really don't want to move a family twice in one school cycle, whatever, so grade band. So I appreciate that. A couple of questions with regards to the committee. 2/3 remain from the past. There's a third that are now new. Can you speak to the representation of that group and as far as how they make up the composition of the district? West side, east side?
We have members from all geographic quadrants, if you will, northwest, southwest, which we didn't do as well before because we hadn't been involved as much with the southwest side, but there's representation from there. We have a lot of representation along this, we'll call it Old State corridor, which is going to be a large impact of this. We have members who have students in very, very young grades, kindergarten, preschool, and lower elementary. We have a couple that have middle school and high school, but have served on the committee for a while. And we have one of our new members whose first child is just starting school with us, but is a graduate of the district and now lives in the southern half of the district as well.
And we were intentional to get a few more residents from the west side of the district, especially being new, so they could go through the process, learn the process, because in future plans, we're going to be putting an elementary on the west side of the district, so that's going to help build capacity with this committee.
As a West Sider, I appreciate that.
I also wanted to just add, one of the great things about this that has worked well is that new people continually come on with experienced people who help them understand this complex process and really build those relationships so that people are in a place where they can ask a lot of questions and have people who've worked through this before and help answer them.
Thank you. One final question. We talk about the feeder patterns and trying to keep kids together as much as possible. So today, kids found out who their teachers were. Parents found out who their kids were going to have as teachers. So I'm curious, for example, my kiddos attend Scioto Ridge. And that is a school that was recently, that the students of Scioto Ridge are now going to be split in terms of, I believe, Hyatt and Liberty, where they all used to be on a track to head to Liberty. So now knowing that, say, this year's fifth graders will be going in different directions next year, is there consideration given to that even as students are assigned within a building? Does that make any sense?
Yes, it makes sense as the question, but never making elementary class lists in my career. I'm not going to pretend to know all that goes into it. However, working with elementary principals for the last 8 years, I do know that that is a very complex process, that they rely on a lot of input. But they also are building community so that they make friends with all of their same grade level peers. But then there's also opportunities, and I think as we think about the second semester transition, we do start to look at those rising sixth graders, those moving out, and our middle school teams have done a great job for years welcoming in and making it. So that's why we try to make it a little bit bigger number. We do understand that there's going to be a close peer that's likely going to go to a different middle school, and that's the unfortunate reality in a district like this. But we do, through our administrators, work to mitigate that through relationships and transition planning.
That is an unfortunate reality, but you know what the great reality is that even though we don't love change and it's uncomfortable, if you do end up getting sent to another school, you're going from one outstanding facility to another amazing building with amazing
For sure.
leadership and educators. So that's the good news.
Anything else? No? All right.
I do have
Go
just
ahead.
one thing that I forgot to say this earlier. As Krista was sharing, our partners and those that are helping transition new people, we are blessed that we continue to work with the company that is the only company I've worked with in my 8+ years doing this. Cooperative Strategies was the name of the company. They have just been purchased and are part of a different organization called Wolpert. And so it's the same group working with us. So they bring a tremendous amount of knowledge in the planning and understanding of our district. And they make it very easy for our committee members to understand how they can help based on the feedback and the guidance they're given.
It's like the second or third time they've been acquired. It's like a good business model.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So,
All right.
all right, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Krista. All right, we'll now move on to the superintendent's report. Mr. Meyer?
Good evening and welcome, everyone. Want to thank Mr. Wright and Ms. Davis for chairing the redistricting committee because, again, as Mr. O'Brien said, it's a hot topic for sure in the district, and we do it a lot. And like Dr. Wallach said, the committee is really intentional at looking at our students, not just numbers, but our students and families, and being intentional in their work. And it is extremely complex work, but we're fortunate again here that we have community members that serve the district and partner with the district and have experience in our redistricting process as they make recommendations, and now to be to me in December. So I'm looking forward to that recommendation. I do have a question for Mr. Gordon. Any chance we can get elementary 17 open next week? Yeah, I keep on asking him. I keep on asking about elementary 17 because the reality is, and we talked about overflow last year with the board, and then we added 6 modular classrooms at Cheshire Elementary. So we are at capacity with the modulars at Cheshire. I had this later in my report, but I'm going to talk about it now because we were talking about redistricting. So we had, when Dr. Fetty presented in the spring, we thought we would get into the school year and then maybe second quarter or second semester, then we would overflow. But we're there at Cheshire, and then we're also overflowing at Arrowhead 4th grade, 2 Shale Meadows, and then Glen Oak 5th grade to Freedom Trail. So what happens when our ratios pop and we have no more room to put another teacher, then we have to look at those ratios. So then that's when we have to make decisions about overflow. So the overflow impacts new families moving into the district. So as they now come to the district and register, we have that overflow plan in place which is coordinated through our new Student Welcome Center, with transportation, with our HR office, with our academic office, and obviously for sure our buildings. So I did want to mention that.
Meyer, does that mean they go to somewhere that might not be their home neighborhood school?
Correct.
And is that revisited again?
Yes, so like, for example, I think the students who went to Shale Meadows last year all had the opportunity to go back. And some decided to stay at Shale Meadows. They liked it and decided to stay. Okay, so with that, actually, before, I'm going to go back because I forgot. So we just received some really good news this afternoon. So Dr. Behrens, come up here, please. So stand here. So as of today, Olentangy has become the first school district in the state of Ohio to hold a certification as a behavior health provider under the Ohio Mental Health and Addiction Services Board. So want to, and as you know, we've done a lot of work with mental health in our schools over the years, and it's extremely important. And Dr. Behrens has led that charge since coming on board. What year did you start?
2016.
In 2016, and has done some really, really good work. And ultimately, what this does is helps us leverage to get more money from the state to fund some of our efforts in support around mental health. So, great job.
Congratulations.
All right, so it's not a secret, but the beginning of the school year is my favorite part of the year. I mean, everybody is, whether they want to admit it or not, they're excited to get back to school. Students are excited, teachers, and for sure parents are excited for school to start. But, you know, over the summer, our students really never stop learning. There are a lot of opportunities that happen over the summer. So here we have 42 students from Berlin High School, Orange High School, and Liberty High School traveled to Europe through a 2-week leadership summer experience. And they were selected actually out of 8th grade. They were nominated based on leadership, character, responsibility, and ability to work in groups. So they spent 2 weeks, and you can see all of the things that they did over the summer. I need to get on this trip next time they go. It looks like a great, great experience. Also, again, partnering with community partners, 356 Delaware County families, so this is all Delaware County families, visited Olentangy's administrative offices. So this happened last week, and it was a great way to end the week. To participate in United Way's Supplies for Scholars event. Actually, 256 families signed up. We had 100 walk-ins. So 356 participated. So it was in this room. They come in here, they pick up a book bag, and then they go through and fill it up with needed school supplies. Really, really cool. And thank Mr. Wright for, he's the liaison with Olentangy and United Way, for helping coordinate that. It was really actually fun to watch. We pulled in the parking lot. They were lined up outside right here in this door, and then came in. So again, at the beginning of the year, we get an opportunity to meet, to bring our administrators back and to meet with all of our new staff. And a lot of things are happening the last few weeks before school actually starts. So on July 31st, we welcome back 152 administrators participated in our annual administrator kickoff. And so what we did this year is we started in, because we have so many new administrators, so we started in smaller, more intimate groups to start that relationship building in the morning. And then we came together in the afternoon at the Columbus Zoo. We've met there the last few years because really it's the only facility that could hold that large of a group. And the focus was on the district mission, recommitting to the district mission to facilitate maximum learning for every student. And again, at the end of the day, that's our fundamental purpose. That's why we're here, for student learning. So it was a great day of reflection and obviously growth with our administrators. So right then, the very next day, we got to welcome 141 new teachers at our 3-day New Teacher Academy. And the New Teacher Academy is something that we do every year to acclimate and initiate and as new teachers transition into Olentangy. And I did have Dr. Fetty run this stat because this 141 is rivaling our biggest class ever. So I was just curious, and I said, hey, 141 teachers, how many districts have 141 or less teachers? Anybody want to guess the number? Well, you already know, I already told you. So 409 out of 610 districts in the state have less than 141 teachers. So again, you know, it's a lot of work behind the scenes as we continue to bring new teachers on board. And our curriculum department, a lot of them are right here, they're top notch. They do a phenomenal job, and they start this planning months ago to provide a positive experience as new teachers come into our district. And then I think they started this a couple years ago. On the final day, it coincides with Elevate, which is a professional learning opportunity for all of our teachers. So we had 200 additional teachers join our new staff for that Elevate Day, and our keynote speaker, Marlon Stiles, who spoke on refreshing the joy to change lives. Because again, I talked about fundamental purpose, but that work's important, and we change lives in education every single day. And actually, Mr. Wright even got to dance a little bit, show off his dance moves. Yes. Yes. He thought the video, somebody does have him on video doing that, but that was great. And again, I wanted to recognize many of our departments who spend a lot of time, again, transitioning into a new school year. So our student well-being team is administered, and I sat in a refresher course yesterday with TCEP, Traumatic Event Crisis Intervention Plan. All of our schools have a team, and this is important work when something traumatic happens, whether it's in a classroom, whether it's in the building, it's in the district, that we have a plan in place to support our schools. The curriculum team also didn't stop at the New Teacher Academy, but works with all of our building leadership teams across every school, supporting them and planning for the school year. So that's happened this past week. And then our pupil services team provided training for CPI training and then IEP training for our intervention specialists coming back. So a lot going on in leadership or learning development. Resource stewardship. So a couple things I just wanted to highlight. This was in the new state bill, and we talked about, Bethany Lenko was here a couple weeks ago, talked about our food service breakfast and lunch program, but this is new. So the state will is now, so for reduced lunch, so on reduced lunch, students pay 30 cents for breakfast and 40 cents for lunches. So the families will no longer have to pay that. The state will pick that up, at least in this biennium budget. So they'll reimburse the district the cost for our reduced applications. Again, 30 cents for breakfast and 40 cents for lunch. And then also, actually, Dr. Wallach, I think you were at a meeting a few weeks ago, they talked about, this was also in the bill, requiring all school districts to go back to at least have some form of cash sales available at event ticket gates. So during COVID, we went to cashless for the most part. We still had an opportunity in our schools for cash, but now that's going to have to come back in a more robust way and plan for that at the gates of events. So our principals and athletic directors have been working with Mr. Jenkins, and then they're working with Ms. Davis on communication of this availability as far as taking cash at our events. And we will do both, actually. So we'll still offer online ticketing and then also take cash. So again, a lot going on in the summer. I'm going to flip through these real quick because we talked about this and I updated the board on some of the projects, but this is the finished product at Liberty, the main gym, Orange Turf, and then we had Olentangy Turf and Liberty Turf. 2 were done on time, 1 just a little bit off schedule because of all the rain that we had. again, all over the summer, a lot of asphalt resurfacing, repairs to parking lots, playgrounds, and walking and bike paths. This is common for us, school roof repairs, and then, of course, the modular classrooms at Cheshire Elementary. And Mr. Gordon, I'm going to ask you again, they'll be ready by the first day of school, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So I think it's important to know, because there's some chatter on social media, for both the turf and the floors in the gymnasium. That was scheduled, planned maintenance, right? So the turf
Yes.
was at the end of its useful life when the boosters kind of granted it in whatever, 10 years ago. It wasn't because we changed logos, it wasn't because of that, it was
Yes.
both the floors and the turf were done because it was the end of the useful life. It was time to change, and a convenient and responsible time to change the logos.
Exactly.
One wasn't because of the other, it was when we did the brand strategy, it was we're not gonna rush in and change a bunch of stuff. When things change or get upgraded or need to be replaced, we'll replace them then, and that's exactly what we did.
Yes, so they fit right in the cycle of
And
when.
Mr. Meyer,
when we
correct me
do
if
that.
I'm wrong, but I know that or at least the softball, baseball is boosters, right?
Correct.
Is
The
booster
turf,
money, so
yes.
that's not coming out of
As
your
were the football fields.
right.
The
It's not
stadium
coming out
fields.
of your
So there's
property
a-
taxes.
Right.
Is that the same for the basketball?
No, that comes out of,
Okay.
that's permanent improvement.
I do just want to highlight with the modular classrooms, there will be covers, right, for students?
Yes.
As they're going
So-
through, so, you know,
I do want to mention that because, again, I want to be transparent. So we have those ordered, the supply chain, they're on back order, so we will put a cover and awning. When they arrive, they'll be installed as soon as they arrive from the modulars to the school, yes. Thank you for that question. And then also interior, so main hallway flooring, family consumer science classroom renovation. So again, that's an upgrade to Olentangy High School to bring that room current with some of our other high schools. And then the technology update in classrooms in the media center. But I do have one stat on, because we did something with the wireless. So we replaced our entire wireless system, so 2,000 access points in our buildings over the summer. So technology, they've been really, really busy and have done a really good job. Okay, so this is, I just want to update the board on third quarter goals. And again, my quarters are yearly quarters, so it starts January 1 with January, February, March, and then the second quarter, and then this is the third quarter, and we'll get into the fourth quarter, just some high-level things that we as a team and organization are working on. So in July, I talked a lot about, again, staffing positions filled. So we thought we were done in July, but we had a couple late resignations, so still working, or actually finalizing those now. Back to school plans, we talked about that. One thing that we did this year was a DLT retreat with our district leadership team. So that went really, really well over 2 days. And again, for us, as a new group, we set norms on how we're going to conduct meetings and how we're going to behave as a team and help serve the organization. So talked a lot about culture and trust and obviously our academic plans moving forward. New superintendent transition program through BASA. So as a new superintendent, I'm in that. I need to take care of my own learning, so I'll do that throughout the year. We talked a lot about facilities planning and enrollment management, so I talked about that. One thing when I was interviewing, through the process, I talked about one-on-one meetings with all the administrators, so I'm about almost halfway there with all of our administrators, and they're going great. So should finish that up probably early October. So moving forward into August, a couple things I want to highlight. Of course, we mentioned this Sunday, the grand opening, and it'll be a beautiful day for Berlin Middle School. I guess they must have had sixth grade, maybe orientation or something there today. The place was packed. So looking forward to that. Redistricting we talked about. New Administrator Academy, I want to talk about that a little bit again, because over the years as we hire new administrators, and we've hired quite a few, we've recognized, again, this is one of our core values, we can always get better. How we can better support our new administrators and help them grow in the district. So Actually, all of these folks to my left here have been working, the directors have been working with Mr. Wright on what that's going to look like. So that's a major goal for us this year. And that's been feedback from last year's new administrators. When I'm doing my one-on-ones, I ask them a question where we can get better, and that's a common thread. Also, as new superintendent, so working with communications on what my public plan's going to be out there as far as introductions and continuing to meet community members. So I've already had a lot of meetings and phone calls with community members, and we'll continue to do that. One thing, again, that's important I have on here and I want to highlight is policy audit. So we're going to go through a policy audit this year, and really we're going to review every policy to ensure alignment to all applicable laws. So Dr. Fetty's in charge of that, and he's going to work, of course, with us as a district leadership team, with our policy committee, which is a board committee, and then obviously then bring the recommendations to the board. So it's really critical for us to, not only audit, but for sure to work through with our administrators how to interpret board policy, what the intent of board policy, and for sure how to apply board policy. So that's going to be a major project, and we're going to work in collaboration with the policy committee on that. Right now, Dr. Fetty tells me we go zeros through 9,000s, and you're through the 4,000s, correct? So we're almost halfway. Excited about that work. And again, it's going to help bring, as we continue to grow, consistency across the district for us. September, and we talk about it here a lot, and we've talked about redistricting in buildings, but the preliminary levy discussion, that is going to be on the horizon, so that's going to ramp up. So I just want to be transparent with the board and the public on that. We're going to work administrator and coach's handbook, so we're going to work on that again to bring some consistency across as we work with administrators on development, and then also our coaches. Wellness committee charter, so that's going to be important, so we're going to start the work on what that charter looks like, and I talked to Mr. Lester today about taking a draft to the committee in September and then eventually bringing that back to the board to approve. And then also very important for us too, district CIP benchmark review. So the board has adopted 8 benchmarks and indicators underneath those benchmarks. So we're going to go through a review this year. We're going to use those this year, but we're going to go through a review to see what's still applicable for us as a district, or what edits and changes we may need to continue to meet changes that have happened in the district. And then for sure, alignment, this is an alignment piece for us as far as departmental and building goals. We'll be finalizing those in September. And then community survey. So the board, every 3 years, our cadence is every 3 years we do a community survey. So we're working through the draft now, so we plan to conduct that community survey with our community members in September.
Is that the same firm? What's the guy's name? Paul
Fallon. Paul Fallon.
Okay.
All right, so administrative employment, Julia Barnhouse. I don't see Julia here tonight. New assistant principal at Orange Middle. Annie Damcheski is here tonight, so you can stand up. I didn't introduce you. Here's Mrs. Damcheski. She's actually coming back to Olentangy from New Albany, so she'll be our assistant director in human resources. Tandy Ham, assistant director of compliance. She is here, so welcome. Melanie Andres, director of human resources. So we know Melanie, but there she is. Christian Ross, coming to us from Columbus Public Schools, is our director of communications, and we're excited that he's on board. Ryan and Jeffrey, I don't see. But I do see Will. I want to introduce Will because Will is a Olentangy High School grad. He was in our teacher academy, a BGSU grad, which I graduated from BGSU. I'm a Falcon, so go Falcons, right? And then he'll be teaching 8th grade science. So he's here. I wanted to introduce him because of his Olentangy connection. Also, tonight, I have a recommendation for the district cyber insurance coverage. We're going to save almost $1,600 compared to last year, and that's because of our two-factor authentication. And I don't know if I want to say this, but I'm knock on wood, we didn't have any claims with that last year.
If you can keep your cyber coverage flat, that's a victory.
Yes, yes. So good job, technology, Mr. Gordon. Good job. This is an annual approval, so we recommend an approval of bus routes and stops for the 23-24 school year to authorize Ms. Carter Evans to make any changes to routes and stops as necessary. And then approval of, yes, Robertson Construction Services for our CMR of record. So they went through the process with the Facilities Committee. I think we had 4 submit. Facilities team scored that, or 4 Facilities Committee scored that, and we're recommending Robertson Construction Services tonight.
That's not a typo, right? It's high school number 5.
That's, thank you for bringing, yes, because that's another good, that's a thing that Olentangy does so well that we plan. So we've talked a lot about growth tonight, and we're going to continue to grow. So yes, that's not a typo. So we're looking at additional buildings in our next ask, and right now that will include elementary 18, 19, and high school 5 as we continue those discussions.
And just to be clear with Robertson, I mean, they're who we have been using recently, and
Yes.
their bid was also $3 million or so less than the
3.1,
others.
almost 3.1 million, yes.
So
And,
both a high-quality company that we've been working with and a
In
by
the
far
West.
low bidder. Yeah.
Okay. And longer report than usual, but we haven't been together for, what, a month, so. Important dates, Olentangy, talked about that, tomorrow night at 6. Berlin Middle School grand opening, Sunday, this Sunday at 1 o'clock. Elementary preschool open house, Tuesday, August 15th, 4 to 6. Those, again, a lot of people attend those. Those are popular. Staff convocation and community partner expo, Wednesday, August 16th, the day before all the kids show up. First day of school, August 17th. Parent technology support night. And again, this is another thing I think that the district does to help support needs that parents have around technology. So that'll be at Orange Middle School on August 22nd. The high school curriculum nights are fast approaching, Wednesday, August 23rd. Preschool, elementary, grades K2 curriculum night. That's August 24th. And then our next board meeting, August 24th, 6:30 p.m. right here. Any questions?
Questions, Mr. Meyer? No?
I wrote something down here.
Okay.
You covered it, because you asked about the fields.
Oh, good.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Mr. Jenkins, Treasurer's Report, please.
Good evening, board members. Treasurers are either perpetually 6 months behind or 6 months ahead. I'm not sure which it is. We just celebrated our new year, so I guess we're ahead. Fiscal year 2023 is in the books, so I thought I would take just a little bit of time tonight to give you a high-level view of some key pieces of the general fund. So the first 4 or 5 slides are just our general fund, which is what's subject to our 5-year forecast. What we have in the slide that you have in front of you would be the fiscal year-to-date actual final totals, cash flow for each of the major receipt areas that you see in front of you. The next column would be the projected remaining. If you're wondering why you might have projected remaining, that's something other than 0. We actually have a forecast for our cash flows as well. So our actual plus our projected would be the following column, and then we compare that to our forecast. So the variance is just simply the difference between the fiscal year-to-date actual and what we were actually forecasting. So certainly on the revenue side, if the variance is positive, I did my job. If the variance is negative, I did not. And that flip-flops when we get to expenditures. This percentage is the percentage of the fiscal year-to-date actual to the forecast. And then I'm going to reevaluate. We actually have then this final one is the fiscal year-to-date actual to the actual plus projected. I'm not sure. That's one of those things where when you create a chart, it meant something to you, and then you stand in front of people and you can't remember why you created that last column. So I may hide it the next time, and you can just ignore it. But you can see.
Can't imagine a scenario where it wouldn't be 100%.
At least I'm honest. So what you have in front of you, if you go totals, $331,581,160 in actual cash. We were forecasting or budgeting for $320 million. It's 104% variance. What that means is our revenues were about $11.5 million higher than what we anticipated. So that's a pretty good year. On the expense side, ultimately, we were budgeting for $304,068,291, and we ended up bringing in actual cash of spending $300,381,987. So that is a negative variance of $3.7 million, and that's exactly what we want to see. Not terribly significant, but we set our benchmark at $304 million and came in at $300 million. If you combine those two numbers, $11.5 million on the revenue side and $3.7 million on the expense side, you add those two together, that means our cash reserves increased by about $15 million for fiscal year 2023.
How many days is that? It's like 3? How many?
What did he say, 15 million?
About 15 million.
Yeah.
The 5 days?
So we're currently, if you go with today's dollars, we're about $850,000, just a shade under $1 million a day. So 15 million is probably around 18 to 20 days that we increased our cash reserves.
Good, good.
Half a
Yeah, $1
month.
million a day is close enough. And this is the graph that puts that all together. So revenue exceeded expenditures by $31 million, so that our ending balance went up $188,004,831. We do have outstanding encumbrances, so our unencumbered cash is $183,155,475. But if you went to the bank as of June 30th to close of business, that's our general fund. That is, if you obviously divide that by about $850,000, you're talking 180 some odd days of cash, a little bit more than that. So our areas that we pointed out, we saw that our tax collections were up by about $4.4 million. Restricted grants and aid, those were up because of timing. We would have receipted our fiscal year 22 catastrophic costs in fiscal year 23. So don't get too excited about restricted grants and aid being a little bit higher. That was just a timing issue. Ultimately, on the expenditure side, we would have had $3.7 million less than budgeted, and most of that was gained in purchase services and supplies. Questions about those? That's the 5-year forecast in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's just more of a comment. I don't want people to get too excited about 188 million, given where we are in the cycle, right? So, and again, the cycle is you raise a bunch of money with revenue, the district grows and spends more, but your revenue's fixed. So your revenue's fixed, your expenditures grow, so you burn it down until you do another levy, then you burn it down. So having 188 million feels great, and it's a little bit better than we expected, but it's where we are in the cycle, which I think is important.
There will be a
Keep in
slide that
context.
points that out in just a
Yeah.
couple of slides.
Perfect.
That's right. So here's a graphical representation of year over year, what we had 23 versus 22. If someone were to point out, what on earth happened for all of their financing sources, remember that the way we used a significant chunk of our ESSER funding was to pay for CDL, committed distance learning, and we would have received the money that we paid for CDL in fiscal year 2022, and that was an exceptional large chunk of ESSER dollars, and so we're this year back to more normal. That $2 million this year was a return of a transfer to the Cafeteria Food Services Fund, and so that was returned back to the general fund. Same graphical representation, and so what Mr. O'Brien was talking about, here's where you can see that in our cycle, we're leaping by $15 or $16 million a year in salaries as we grow. Our benefits are jumping, 3 to $4 million per year as we add purchase services for ESC. This is where, in those first three columns, salaries and wages, employee benefits, and purchase services, we are a people business. As we continue to bring schools online, that's where the growth is going to be.
So is that where all of our purchase services savings came from? Is there anything else in there that we saved? Because we saved $2 million in that item, right? So that's is that all ESC stuff, or is there other things in purchase services?
So part of that could have just been the number that was originally carried when I inherited the 5-year forecast, and I'm almost positive, my memory serves me correctly, that the first thing I did was brought that down. So the savings may not have been realized as much as just me deciding that it didn't need to be quite that high. I can investigate and find exactly where that is. In general, I would say the ESC bill increased, not because we did anything wrong, but just because we had more students to serve. So I wouldn't think it's the ESC, but I could find out. It wouldn't be terribly difficult to find out where it went down. So I could do that as well if you'd like.
Do not want to discourage the savings. That's a good thing.
Yeah. So I do know that that was one of the original estimates that I dialed down just a little bit, was purchase services.
Just to be clear, you've been here less than a year, is that right?
Pardon?
You've been here less than a year?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the final thing that I wanted to point out is more what Mr. O'Brien is talking about. In the cycle right now, that $183 million represents, well, 188. Please note that the days cash is net of encumbrances. So really, the line you're looking at is the light green. That's 228.45 days of operating cash. Now, the way we get that operating cash is if you look at our expenses and you look at the carryover, that would fund for fiscal year 2023 228 days of operations if we didn't have a single penny of revenue coming in. So you basically take your yearly expenses, which in this case is $300 million, $381, $985. You divide that by 365. That tells you what you spend per day. And then you divide that into the $188 million. And so what happens over time is even if you keep your cash balance relatively constant, your expenses are going up. So next year, it's not a mistake, cash balance will go up to $201.5 million. But that's only going to be 219 days of cash because expenses are going to go from $300 million to $334 million. So that's what Mr. O'Brien was talking about, is as your expenses go up, which expenses for a school entity, for any government entity, are going to go faster than your revenue because of what we talked about 2 or 3 board meetings ago with levy rates rolling backwards. So by the time we get to fiscal year 2027, which is the 26-27 school year, we'll have about 101 days of cash. Now that seems, wow, it seems like a lot of money, $113 million. 101 days of cash is barely over a quarter of a year. So that's 3 months. Different types of things that you consult will recommend anywhere between 45 and 60 days of cash throughout the 5-year cycle. We recently passed a policy that says we're looking for 60 days. If you roll this forecast forward 1 more year with no new revenue, we absolutely will fall below that 60-day threshold. The only reason this didn't roll forward is because when I ran this report, we weren't in fiscal 2024 yet. But those numbers are available, and I can share them at the next board meeting if that's edifying.
Just a quick clarification. What are your assumptions in year 5 and 6 of fair school funding for, are you looking at give or take 40 for those last 2 years or higher?
So I am flattening it at 2/3. So what I mean by that is if the formula was fully funded and you compared that number to what we got in fiscal year 2020, for this year, we're getting half of the gain. Next year, we'll get 2/3 of the gain. I'm leveling it off at 2/3 of the gain.
Which is a very conservative estimate.
That's a very conservative estimate. That means we'll have work to do. 2 years forward from now, we'll be asking the state legislature to continue the trend, which should in fiscal year 2026 go to 83%. And then if they follow the trend by 2027, whatever the formula says, we'll get every penny of the increase.
In drawing that out, that helps a little bit on 26 and 27, but not completely.
Correct. The other thing that's happening, and it's just how the formula works, in a year where our valuations are going to go up by 35%, at least that's our estimate, that is going to shift a significant chunk of the share locally, and as it should. You know, we lobbied for this formula, and we said as a district builds its capacity, it should be able to do more of its fair share of the funding formula. So one of the things that you're going to see is the numbers we talked about even 2 board meetings ago for what our anticipated state funding will be. I didn't want you to think there was a bait and switch when you see the new numbers. Those numbers will have dropped. The reason they will have dropped is because now that we're pretty certain we're getting a 30 to 35% increase in our property valuation, that will cause our state funding to come down some.
And just in case someone's tuning in for the first time, that doesn't mean our property tax collections go up 35%.
That's exactly right.
Just a little footnote.
Yep, 35% increase in value will actually increase Olentangy local schools' taxes by about 6 to 7%. And that is a perfect segue to the video series that I've been working with the communications department on that should be going out to our community to review here soon. That was a great question. Just for fun, now we'll go away from the 5-year forecast. This is the cash balance across all of our funds. We talk a lot about our general fund, which we should. You know, it's 75 to 80%. But this just shows that as we ended the fiscal year, we have our $188 million in general fund cash balance, but we also have all of these other sub-funds. Now, the difference with those funds is they are tied exclusively to specific purposes, and we can't just simply, use that money for other things. Like, for example, our debt service fund has about $30,293,000. Well, that's what we need for our debt service payment that is coming up in December. Each one of these funds, $53.394 million, is dedicated to being able to construct elementary school number 17. So everything that we have in those funds beyond general fund is tied to specific purposes that can't just simply be switched around when we have needs for growth and things of that nature. That usually almost always comes from your general fund.
When do ESSER funds expire? Is that next year or this year?
So ESSER 2 has to be liquidated by January 1 of 2024. ARP ESSER or ESSER 3 has to be liquidated by January 1 of 2025.
And that's the only one we got more than pizza money on, right?
So we really didn't even get the original share of ESSER 2 and ARP ESSER. We got the state supplements.
Right.
That's correct. So we would have gotten, after the first couple of rounds, first 3 rounds, we would have gotten ESSER, which was round 2, and we got round 2B, which was the state supplement. And then ARP ESSER, we really didn't get anything, and we got ARP ESSER state supplement as our share. Action items are pretty straightforward. July 6 board minutes. The approval of the fiscal year 2023 commercial paper report. That is required by revised code. It has to be sent to the Ohio Auditor and ODE. We invest in the very short-term commercial paper of high-quality businesses, and when I say short-term, about 270 days. Obviously, I just covered the highlights of the financial report, and then a donation from the Olentangy Liberty Athletic Boosters to Olentangy Liberty High School. Questions?
So commercial paper is pretty good right now, right?
Commercial paper is good. Commercial paper has, to me, always been a really good investment strategy. Yep. It's a brief training, and once you've gotten the training, you're able to invest, and it works out really well.
Good. All right, any other questions for Mr. Jenkins? No?
Thank you.
Good report. Thank you. All right, we'll now transition to the public participation. Looks like we have a couple comments.
So this evening, we have Ben Weber, and he wants to speak about introducing himself.
Good evening, members, audience. I just wanted to stop by and introduce myself. My name is Ben Weber. I'm a veteran, former law enforcement officer, father, which I'm most proud of. Olentangy Orange marching band, chaperone, a little nervous, apologize for that. In my other capacities, I tell somebody something, they just do it. So anyway, also a chaperone for the Olentangy Orange marching band, which I've served 4 years. Even with the band camp this year. But just want to introduce myself because I'll be running for school board.
Right.
So, thank you.
All right, good luck.
For your service.
Yeah,
And
thank
my
you.
lovely wife, Susan.
And we also have, I'm going to do the best I can with this, tell me if I get it right, Michael Bukowau. Did I get that wrong?
Say, how do you say it?
Buchanan.
Oh, I thought that was a V at the end, I'm sorry.
Really bad. Wow. Hey, the report you did, that was good.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I'm here today as a concerned parent. I have a kid in the district, and I'm here tonight to share information about an unfortunate situation in the Olentangy Berlin High School in the girls golf program. We had a tryout over the last 3 days that was unfair, and I'm very disappointed in the district. And me and my family, we would like to appeal the results. I brought some information to here tonight to share with the superintendent and the board members and the treasurer. If you give me a moment, I'll pass out what I have and then I'll finish.
For your patience.
As I was saying, the tryout process was very unfair, and we have a young African-American girl that had a goal, had a dream, achieved that goal through hard work, and Coach Phil Callahan is trying to strip her of that opportunity that she earned and she deserves. We're appealing the final results of the tryout, and we're asking you as the board and the superintendent to look at the numbers and check with the golf experts to see if the swing in these numbers are mathematically impossible. Phil Callahan is a math teacher at Berlin High School. He understands math, and we're asking you to challenge him, to ask him, how is this possible and how was that possible? And we're asking you to look into it and do a full investigation and get back with us with some answers. Thank you.
Just as a point of clarification, there's a process outlined in the athletic handbook on appealing. So you kind of go to the coach, then the AD, then the principal. There's a process that's followed. And I know I've actually spoken to Mr. Meyer about this, that process is underway, so.
That process is underway. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we went to the building AD, we went to the principal, and it's left us nowhere. So as a last stop, we're coming to the board and the superintendent to ask you guys to take action and look into this, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're on to our discussion item. It's the second reading of the board policy updates. Dr. Fetty?
Good evening. At the last meeting, I presented three policies for your review that you'll be asked to vote on later this evening. Are there any questions that we can answer or address related to those policies?
Anything?
All right, thank you.
This is- Just as a point of information, this is the nefarious attendance policy, and I say that sarcastically. And
Yes,
this is a tax appeal and district support organizations.
correct.
Okay, so now we'll go into action items. So I'll present board action items A through C, which would be the approval of the board policy updates, a memorandum of understanding with the, one of the collective bargaining units, as well as a resolution of intent not to provide career technical education in grades 7 and 8. So could I have a motion to approve board action items A through C, please?
So moved.
Could I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on board action items A through C?
The only thing I would ask is, Mr. Meyer, do you want to just clarify what C is in case people have
Yes.
questions about?
Yeah, so C, sure. C is an annual approval from the board with this resolution because in our middle schools, we're on a 6-week rotation for family consumer science. So we don't meet the hour requirements from the state, so we need to do a resolution to waive that.
And the statute allows us to do that if we
Absolutely.
approve it.
Yes.
Right.
So we have nothing against career technical education. We
No,
support it.
we support it
In the DACC,
100%.
and we've, just not at grade 7 and 8. Okay. So with that, Mr. Jenkins, please call the roll.
Dr. Dabrico,
Yes.
Dr. Wise,
Yes.
Dr. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Lester.
Yes.
All right, so next would be Mr. Jenkins. You want to present the treasure action item, please?
Action items A through D, as discussed in the treasurer's presentation.
Okay. Could I have a motion, please, for treasure action items A through D?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Dr. Wise,
Yes.
Dr. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Lester,
Yes.
Dr. Dabrico.
Yes.
All right, and then Mr. Meyer, if you'd present the superintendent action items, which there are many.
Yeah, I'd like to present superintendent action items A through E for approval.
Okay, could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on superintendent action items?
Are board members allowed to go to the London New Year's Day Parade as a student trip?
Sure,
just
as a
curious.
chaperone.
If you want to
yes.
pay for it yourself.
All right.
We'll collect your money. We're going to take the first
What if
payment.
they're providing board oversight?
Yeah, right.
I don't believe that's necessary, but
parent.
that's okay.
We'll drive.
Yeah.
I believe we had a motion and a second. Discussion. Please call the roll.
Dr. Wallach,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Lester.
Yes.
Dr. Dabrico,
Yes.
Dr. Wise.
Yes.
Right, I'll now entertain a motion to convene into an executive session with the purpose to discuss disputes involving a public body that is subject to pending court action and with legal counsel present. So I have a motion to go into executive session, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second. We will only be returning to adjourn. We will not be taking any action when we return. So with that, please call the roll. Mr. Jenkins?
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Lester,
Yes.
Dr. Dabrico,
Yes.
Dr. Wise,
Yes.
Dr. Wallach.
Yes.
All right, we are now in we'll go to a, do you want to bring,
Talking.
Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. It's 9:33 PM. Our only last item is to entertain a motion to adjourn. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Everybody wants. All right, we have a motion, and a second. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, Mr. Jenkins, please call the roll.
Catching up here. Oh, this wasn't made into an action item. There we go. Mr. Lester?
Yes.
Dr. Daberco?
Yes.
Dr. Wise?
Yes.
Dr. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.